Hey everyone, welcome. Market analysis time. Pretty interesting day today. I certainly can't complain. The agriculture markets were pretty good. Crude oil moved around a decent amount. I mean, we had some pretty good movement today. If you were watching the meat sector, more namely talking about live cattle opening up with a 10-point gap down. That was a little bit interesting, but aside from that, definitely can't complain too much. So before we jump in, as always, make sure to swing on over to slingshotfutures.com, scroll down, and click on the Join the Daily Outlook newsletter. From here, you're going to be able to sign up for our email newsletter list, so you'll be notified every time one of these videos comes out. Along with that, in the email, we talk about a bunch of stuff that we just don't have time to talk about in this webinar. So we're going to cover stocks, options, crypto, futures, you name it. If it's moving, it'll show up in there at some point. So make sure to sign up for that so you don't miss any of that ever again. Of course, also click on the Live Trade Room subscription and trial info where you can sign up for a free 3-day trial in the Live Trade Room. You can hang out with us for a couple days during the morning session while we're trading and see kind of how we approach the markets and how everything works, ask some questions, and it's just kind of a fun time. So make sure to sign up for that if you haven't done so already. Now, looking at the market, starting off with the euro, of course, being our first line of interest, or our first market of interest. Ooh, just lost my pillow. The euro market as a whole has had some let me go exorcist a minute. All right, I'm gonna give up on this stupid pillow for right now. The euro had some pretty good bearishness to the downside, and looking for that breakdown through that level of support, 23,245, has finally broken down, and we have, well, I mean, it's certainly not bad follow through. We still have that open objective just a little bit further down. That's kind of the first primary area of interest at 745 down to 725 in that area. But for the most part, you know, sellers have been driving the market down pretty aggressively, and everything is looking pretty good for them to complete those objectives. Now, the buy support at 23,245 is now gone, so we can get rid of that. And we can also get rid of this rising support, or at least kind of modify it a little bit, get it out of the way for now until we can put in a solid bottom. Right now, it's not a good enough bottom to anchor it on, so we'll just put it up something like that, just to get it out of the way for now. But the overall objective right now going into tonight's session is to continue selling downward so we can get those objectives at 745, maybe even a little bit further. I mean, keep in mind, you know, we do have this ABCD leg kind of coming into play of the smaller area, but it is kind of hard to ignore that larger one that we've been talking about for a while as well. This big drive down, pause, and a secondary drive down, which leaves open objectives quite a bit farther down at 1.222. I'm still not necessarily sold on the fact, bad pun, sorry, not necessarily sold on the fact that it's going to go that far, but I am looking for at least 745 to get tested. Probably tonight, going into tomorrow's session is the more likely area, so going into tonight's session looking for selling pressure on any type of correction to drive the market back down and fill those areas. Outside of that, though, nothing else really new to add for the euro. We have a new level of resistance at 23,645. No new levels of support or anything like that, so just bear continuation to the downside at looking for those targets. On gold, gold had a absolutely beautiful bounce off of that measured area of interest. Now, it doesn't look like it right now, but if you zoom into a faster time frame, which we'll take a look at in a second, you can see how nice that bounce was. Now, originally the wedge low was, right around there. But we were measuring off the high of that previous and then the breakout move, that distance. A lot of times markets love creating an equidistant breakout on the opposite end. Once this side fails, so this side obviously did fail, it comes crashing back down to the lows, take that box and drag it down here and give us an estimated measurement of where that price point is going to be. And if we zoom into a faster time frame, I do that every time, 5M, get the 5-minute chart rocking and rolling here. You can see where that big old box of support, the low end of that support, is coming into play. And here is where it was created, down here, taking it from high down to low. And once we reached down into the bottom of that, the response was very, very good. They did slide through it by just a little bit. The initial test was to the tick, but then they slid through it by just a little bit, popped back above it, use it as support, and gave a rally up. From that point, I mean, we're talking from the low, that was a to the tick test, to the overall high of about 48 ticks. So it was certainly no small amount of bouncing that we had going on there. But we did find resistance off of the 200-period moving average on the 5-minute and started pushing back down to the lows. But that certainly has not stopped this level. You can see not only has it been really, really good support, but it also has been really good resistance. So there are a lot of traders are playing it on both ends. Definitely an area of interest to keep in mind for the rest of the day. As we get farther away from the time in play, in this case, the 5-minute chart versus the 240, the longer the farther away we get from that time period, the less important that level is going to be. But for today, definitely a pretty big area of interest. Now, in terms of resistance, we do have a new level of resistance coming off of the highs. Let me mark that up there. That's going to be at 46.9. And really, the primary objective for a lot of sellers was to get down to a new low. And if we look at these lows, they did get it. And interestingly enough, you can see everybody exited on that low because it went just through it and popped all the way back up. And that's a big, really, it's just a big sign that a lot of traders took profit. Not necessarily convinced that buyers are coming in for new buys and trying to shove the market up to a new all-time high or anything, but we are seeing that a lot of sellers have taken profit at that bottom objective, and well, so far it's holding pretty well. They haven't even come close to closing underneath that low, and a lot of traders may, still be on the sell side. I can't blame them. With that strong of a leg down and that weak of a bull response, it wouldn't be a surprise at all to see the sellers kind of try to drive it a little bit further lower. So with that said, the next area of interest is going to be a possibility of a 3-push wedge bottom. We have an inside swing low to the next swing low, and it creates an area of interest a little bit farther down. Now, I mean, what I would really like to see here is a good push to the downside, testing not only the 3-push wedge low, but maybe a wick breakout to test the 786 at 1321.9, because that lines up so well with other levels of support inside of there that it would create a really nice scenario for buyers to try to jump on in. Overall, though, going into the overnight session, we are breaking through that equidistant breakout point after that good 48-tick bounce. Now we're looking for a little bit more bearishness to drive the market down to see if we can get some of those objectives tonight going into tomorrow. Over on crude oil, for the most part, we were looking for an open objective this morning of the market retesting that inside swing at 62.80. Never had it. They actually came pretty close inside of there. We had a good rally to the upside, kind of that V-bottom twin reversal we were talking about yesterday. And that led into a rally back up, testing the 50% of the downswing, held for a couple hours, and then popped back up, trying to break out again. And that has immediately failed as well. So a lot of shaky ground here for crude oil, having a hard time getting anything going, but the sell side I would still like to see in the short term. Now I say in the short term because really what I want to see on the sell side is for the market to come down, right? We had that put in a low, we broke out below the low, twin reversal back up. I want to see the market come back and tap that low to try to shove the market back up towards those highs, and that's the primary kind of area of interest that I'm looking for. So 62.80 is going to be the big area of interest for me going into tonight and into tomorrow's trading to see if we can get some bouncing plays off of that 62.80 zone. We do have a new level of support forming at this bottom area, 62.27, showing that buyers have had a really strong leg up. That's where we had that twin reversal low. It does kind of look like a V bottom as well, and kind of looks like a head and shoulders a little bit too, but a little bit of a sharp head there, cone head, kind of head and shoulders. For the most part, though, looking for a retest of 62.80 going into tomorrow. Maybe we can get some nice bouncing off of that. Get rid of that. That's pretty much out of the way. And then over on the S&P. Now, the S&P has had a good continuation rally to the upside. We're still hunting for this level of resistance above us at 79.5 to 87.25, and that zone is definitely something that I want to be keeping my eyes on. The overall upward momentum that we have going on right now, it looks okay, but I would really like to see maybe kind of a blow-off candle, right? We have that big spike to the upside. We have a spike in channel. Seeing a fake break, kind of failure blow-off top into that level of resistance would be a beautiful level to try to sell into and drive the market lower. Either way, this is a huge kind of chunk of resistance, a ceiling, if you will. Pretty thick one, but a ceiling nonetheless, and looking for selling pressure to kind of kick off in that high, starting off at 79.5 up to 87.25, and even all the way up to around 2,700 or so, that bigger round number. But right now, we have a very strong bull response going on. I don't want to be the first one to try to catch the, well, I guess catch the throwing star, right? This isn't a falling knife, so throwing knife at your face, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to be the first one to the party when I have these types of situations. When we get a nice rally off the bottom, really strong move, I'm not going to be the one that's trying to pick the top. Not my kind of thing. So what I'm looking for instead is looking for that rally into resistance, see them kind of double step it and turn back down from there to try to catch the push back down towards the lows. The only support that we really have to work with is going to be 25.76 3/4, but we do have this inside swing and the overall big level of support a little bit further down. So even though they didn't really respect it very well when it kind of cracked through it, this area is still an area of interest at 25.95, and if it does want to dip down there in the next coming day or so here, we do want to keep an eye on that. So we'll make that a nice thick line at 25.95. Overall, though, looking for the bulls to continue into the overnight session, waiting for a secondary selling attempt off of that area of resistance to shove the market back down. Primary objective right now, because we don't have a whole lot to work with, is going to be driving down to 26.1875. But in reality, depending on how this really kind of breaks out, we might be utilizing this other swing high instead as a shorter term objective. So definitely a couple things to keep in mind, but for the moment, just kind of keeping an eye on things and waiting for it to get up into the area of interest. Now, kind of doubling back and looking at some of the other side markets here, the bonds have once again proven why it's so important to wait for really good information, a clue that the market is making a leap higher. Remember, before we were looking for a buying opportunity down here, but we were talking about how the strength of this bear leg makes me a little bit nervous. I don't want to be the one, again, catching that falling knife. So we got to wait for a secondary bull attempt. The buyers tried kicking it up. They pulled back, tried getting that second one. You can see at one point in time this was a nice bull bar, but then it ended up collapsing all the way back down and it never triggered in any type of trade. So that's the importance of waiting for good information. And sometimes waiting for that info means you might get in a little bit late, but I would rather get in late than having to sit through this giant pullback in the red and trying to manage a bad trade, trying to get something out of it, right? Not really a situation I want to put myself in, so a really good example of why waiting for information is so important. Now, looking back at this previous channel high that we had drawn up here, this is going to create an area of interest, right? We have this overall channel high working really nice. They held it, broke out above it, used it as support, tapped another high that would be a kind of a three-push wedge top in this case before a large reversal down. They held the inside of it as resistance, and if we can get another rally back up, that's going to be another level of resistance again. So the buyers have got a lot of work cut out for them. Downside objectives still a little bit further down at 144.625. Again, these 30 seconds, I have no idea. I need a little printout sheet or something to tell me what that is. But around 144.22-ish, we'll go with that. As a downside objective to see if they can push a little further. And it really wouldn't hurt my feelings to see if they can drive further down to 144.40625, because that is the starting point of that big rip to the upside. And then the anticipation is that if the market can get down into that area, we should find some buyers defending that original lift to the upside for at least some scalping opportunities going into tonight and tomorrow. So that's going to do it for the futures outlook. Now we'll take a look at the news for tomorrow. And the news is, well, we've got some big stuff going on, that's for sure. Sorry for the dings and alerts in the background there. It's my Thinkorswim platform. To make sure that nothing got screwed up here before. I always want to double check when I hear alerts. I always want to know what those alerts mean. Yeah, not a problem. So the news for tomorrow, we do have all day China, the tomb sweeping day again. And the main reason it's showing up here in the first place is because they're, this is set in Eastern time and they're, 12, 14, 16 hours ahead, however far ahead they are. So it kind of overlaps into 2 days for us. But it's more on the later part of this. Now, at 8:30 in the U.S. session, we have the big number, which is going to be the non-farm payrolls. This is a number that you do not want to mess around with. Non-farm payrolls, sometimes non-farm payroll day or NFP day, traders will literally not show up at all. They'll just skip trading non-farm payroll day altogether because they don't want to deal with it. And that's not necessarily a bad idea some days. Other days, you end up missing out on a lot of opportunities. So, you know, you do have to kind of take your own personality into consideration here. But a lot of traders, keep in mind, once that news is done, they may just take off and not have to worry about it anymore. But tomorrow, non-farm payroll day, forecast for non-farms are 193,000. Previous was 313,000. The unemployment rate forecasted at 4%, was 4.1%, so a little bit better there. Then we have some news out of Canada as well. The employment change for March, they're forecasting 18.8K versus 15.4. On Canada, at 10 o'clock, switch that sentence around a little bit. The IV PMI for March forecasted at 60.2. And then we start going into the afternoon session, not before the UK has some minor news, more of a speaker, really, at 11:15 with Carney on the microphone. And then at 13:30 in the afternoon session, we have Powell hitting the microphone for the US session. So for the most part, probably not going to make a big amount of movement with Powell on the microphone or Carney if you're trading the UK markets. Not likely going to have a big response. That said, most traders are going to be watching that 8:30 time frame. That's going to be the big one, and everybody's going to be keeping their eyes on the non-farm payrolls and the unemployment rates. And if you're in Canada, the employment change as well. So plenty of stuff going on tomorrow, that's for sure. Now, taking a look at the overall movement for today on the agriculture sector, because I do love me a good bit of ags. The agricultures have had a... Oh, wow. My mouse sensitivity is through the roof right now. Let's get this back on the screen here. So the agriculture market overall has had some really good movement. And what I wanted to talk about more so was live cattle. And I can see I had a couple trades on there for live cattle. But for the most part, the big interesting thing about live cattle, you'll notice it looks normal, and then that happened, right? So we closed yesterday way the heck up here. That was at 112.950, and we opened up way down here. So just a monstrous gap to the downside, and that's going to create a lot of volume to start the day off. Now remember, the session starts at 9:30, but the pit doesn't open until 10:05. Well, it used to at least. And we started the day off with a lot of volume. A quick whip to the downside, rip to the upside. I mean, this thing was just bouncing all over the place. Lots and lots of opportunities on cattle today. And this just goes to show you why that is. There's just, I mean, with that big of a gap, you have to keep in mind that you're probably going to see some pretty decent movement here. Outside of that, though, soybeans was another good mover. We had a couple trades firing off here on soybeans. I don't know why that is such a weird looking... There we go. We started the day off, not really much of a gap, and the overnight session was relatively lackluster. Not a whole lot going on there, but we did have a gap down to a new high, back down to a new low, back up. Didn't quite make a new high, and a lot of times sellers will fade those moves, but it ended up popping up to a new high and then finish it off with a secondary new high before turning down. Now, the open hit, and keep in mind, this is a tick chart. This is a 233 tick chart, and these candles happen really fast sometimes, especially right at the open. You'll notice a timestamp. This first candle fired off at 9:30. And it's still 9:30, still 9:30, still 9:30, finally 9:31. So all of these candles happen in the first 1 minute period. So even though it looks like, oh man, you know, why didn't you sell there? Well, because I didn't have time to. It just went way too fast. But we did catch the follow-up sell to the downside before seeing a reversal back up. And ever since then, soybeans has been on an absolute tear going into the afternoon session. So pretty good movement on soybeans as well. And I certainly can't complain with the overall movement on the agriculture side of things. I mean, the agriculture markets have been awesome lately, whether it's because of the tariff stuff or what, I don't really care why, but they've been trading really well. If you haven't paid attention to the agriculture markets, everything from soybeans, soybean meal, corn, wheat, all the big names, you might want to take a look at them. They're actually trading really nicely right now. Something to keep in mind, at least. There's another chart alert for you. But let's take a look at some of the other things going on here. Of course, one of our big ones that we've been keeping an eye on for a while, Boeing. Boeing has been catching a lot of buying volume still. We have that rotation off of the lows trying to get a pick back to the upside. And this is forming a nice strong bull bar to potentially get that going. Now, the index markets have been relatively strong today. Well, at least initially. And so Boeing is kind of picking up along with that rally up. Now, we were talking about yesterday how getting a trap underneath this low could potentially be a nice area of interest for that lift back to the upside. And so far, it's been working out really nicely. They haven't even been able to close underneath that low. So Boeing definitely showing some good strength here. If they can close out a strong... Ow, I just bit my tongue. A strong bull bar, we might be able to get some good follow-through back up towards those highs. Another one that was on the list was Twitter. Twitter did end up getting a continuation bouncing off of that gap fill. Never quite pushed down to 25.24 for that gap, but if we zoom into a slightly faster time frame here, maybe a daily chart will give us a little more to work with. Zoom in a little closer here. We can see that that gap fill worked very, very well. Gave a full day plus some on the wick on the highs here. Gave a nice bounce off of that for rallying back up. Looking for the next gap fill just a little bit further down at 25.24. Hasn't hit yet, and it doesn't look like the bears are done on Twitter. Again, mostly, in my opinion, sympathy selling. I don't think there's a reason for this other than everything else is falling. Might as well short Twitter too. But, you know, fundamentally speaking, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. So this, to me, I'm just looking at this thinking, be able to pick up some sale prices here on Twitter in the next little bit on this dip. Now, a couple other ones on the list. Tesla. We are getting that nice rally back. We were talking about support at 259.74. Did slide through it a little bit down to around 244, but not before rallying all the way back up. They have filled in this gap over here. And now the next primary objective for Tesla is to stay above this previous low. That's a structure low that's been going on for quite a while where they're putting in support, support, support. If we can break back above that, it's usually all chances switch, basically. The buyers gain a lot of probability above 295, looking for continuation back up. So Tesla is looking really, really strong. We'll see if we can get some more continuation. But for right now, certainly can't complain with this amount of bullishness coming in here. Beautiful call on that one if you were able to grab that. And then one of the other ones, of course, Facebook, even though I'm not really, you know, doing a whole lot with it, staying away from it, I still want to make sure what's going on. Just gapping up, seeing a little bit of bearishness to start the day off. Nothing crazy happening there. And then what was the other one? Was it MasterCard or Micron or MasterCard? That's what it was. So this is the bull bar that we wanted to see. We've been talking about for a while. Yeah, definitely, Ronald. I'll take a look at corn for you. We were looking at the bottom of this MasterCard channel, and just we needed to see a strong bull bar, right? We were talking about the day previous. I wanted to see this candle close strong like we had here, or like we had here. Do you remember me saying this? I sound like a broken record. Yeah, we've been waiting for a candle that looks like that. We finally got one, right? That's the bull candle that we've been waiting for, and now we gap up to the next day. It does create an open gap, and that means that that will be a level of support on a pullback, but buyers will definitely be interested in this, trying to shove the market back up towards the highs with a primary objective of around that, front run it a little bit and say 182, right? 182 would be the primary objective to the upside, but we do have a couple other things in the way. This little kind of floor that was put in earlier also has a gap around it, so if you want to play it really, really safe, then you're looking at probably closer to 180. Either way, though, we did get the bull bar that we've been waiting for, and it is looking really good. We'll just see if we can get a little more continuation up. Let me jump back on corn for you, Ronald, here. Take a look here. So corn, for the most part, has had, you know, on the faster time frame, it's mostly just been up, right? There hasn't really been much else going on. They haven't even, I don't think, broken a swing low today. Yeah, they haven't even broken a swing low today. So basically, this is not only just a, you know, a strong trend. This is a very strong trend to the upside on the intraday. It hasn't even, like I said, it hasn't even broken a swing low. Swing low, swing low. Not a single one has been broken. That means that the first one that breaks, you might be able to find a nice little bounce support there for a quick scalp to the upside. But, you know, on looking at kind of zoomed out time frames, on bigger time frames, jumping over to like a daily chart here, get corn on a daily, we can see a couple things that really stand out here. First of all, we're still stuck inside this big bull bar. And one of the big things that I love seeing when we have this huge breakout momentum, regardless of the reason behind it, could be news-based, could be no news at all. I mean, maybe there's a hurricane, you know, who knows? But whatever the reason, whenever there's a huge bar like that, especially when they put in what we call a brick bottom, meaning that there's no wick on the low, like you would normally see with a candle, that wick doesn't exist. A brick bottom candle, or a very small wick, kind of like a pigtail, I guess, but with a big, big bull body, the low of that candle becomes a monstrous magnet. Traders love putting a lot of emphasis on the lows or highs of those types of candles, and that's exactly what we had here. The market tried breaking underneath it, failed, and bounced right back up again with some really good bullish momentum. And now we're following it up with a really weak bear bar into a strong bull bar so far. And we do have a little bit of time left on the day before we close this out. So, I mean, corn looks really good right now to try to reattempt some of these highs. Some of the other levels of resistance above us that could definitely be maybe objectives if you're a buyer, or maybe levels of resistance if you're looking for scalping. But that's going to be at 391. That was where we had that trap on the highs. Right, so they trapped above the highs, collapsed all the way back down to fill in some of this support back here. Again, another brick bottom candle after a gap. Don't say I didn't warn you. Nice little bounce there, back up again, and now we have this really solidified level of resistance. It's already been proven once at 391 with a really strong rejection. Now it's just a matter of whether or not they want to respond again. So that's going to be kind of the area of interest that I'm going to be keeping an eye on going into tomorrow, especially with such a strong bull bar. If it closes looking like this, very likely it's going to try to make an attempt to break out of that. But on a faster time frame, you can still find some scalping opportunities off of this. 391 would be that first one, and then that's really it for a while. You know, we don't have much else unless we go farther back, and that resistance isn't until, man, kind of personal preference if you want high closes or high opens, but you have a high close there and you have a high open there, creating a zone of interest above it around 414, back in the 400s. Not to mention, of course, 400. 400 is going to be a big level of support or resistance just because it's a big round number. Traders love big round numbers. So keep an eye on that 400, of course, in the interim. But if we do start catching some legs to the upside, we could find ourselves back up towards the 415 in not too long of an amount of time. Now, in terms of channels or trend lines or anything else that might stand out here, you know, there is a possibility that we have something to kind of work with, but you'll notice they're holding higher lows. They're not really dipping back to the bottom of that, and that's usually a clue that they're getting a little bit more speed. You can kind of think of this as a fan, where you have that one, and then it gets a little bit higher, and then it gets a little bit higher, and it kind of fans its way up. It looks more like that's the case, and that would be from here to here. And further to kind of confirm that, if we extend this to the right, we can see that they actually held it as support. So obviously they are looking to try to fan this a little bit further up. Now, one thing that we can do is we can take this and recreate it as a channel and try to put this on the top to give us another kind of anchor point. And this makes me feel even better about it, right? Because now, look at these highs. They're almost perfect. We have a test that was the anchor point, and it actually confirms on the next high. So this is a confirmed bull channel without really having to do anything. So corn still looks really, really good. And after all of this volatility back and forth, if they close out a strong bull bar, wouldn't be a surprise to see them challenge 391 going into tomorrow, and maybe even try to break above it, going for that big 400 level. So, I mean, honestly, corn looks really nice right now. And if you look at the intraday chart today, it's no wonder why. I mean, just ludicrously bullish today. Like I said, they haven't even broken a swing low. So, I mean, if you're looking for a one of those types of areas on corn that buyers will be scaling into, you're at one right now. They're at the swing lows. The first time that a swing low has been challenged today at all, right? This is the first time. And we're going on, what, 130? So... I mean, intraday, there are going to be a lot of traders who are looking to build into this position and try to build, assuming that tomorrow is going to be bullish. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah, no problem. So again, we are going into the latter part of this. I've got to bring the portion to get it detailed today, so I have to cut it a little bit earlier. But feel free to type in a couple of the questions or markets that you've got, and we'll take a look at them. And see what we can find here. Overall, while I'm waiting for anybody to type some stuff in here, we had an okay day today. A couple scalps at the last part of the day on cattle while it was rallying higher. Pulled out for the small account challenge that we've been doing. Pulled out 60 bucks on cattle. Pulled out 75 bucks on soybeans. Certainly can't complain. You know, taking a small account and trying to grow it as much as we can with taking as small a risk as we can. That's not a bad result for the day. So the small account challenge, for those of you who are tracking those, trade's been going pretty well. Not too bad of a day at all. Unfortunately, today was one of those days. I had so many entry points on cattle that I tried getting, and every single one of them skipped me. I didn't get filled on so many of them. Tried taking a short here, didn't fill me. Tried taking a follow-up short here, didn't fill me. Tried taking a short here, didn't fill me. It's just the day of no fills on the cattle markets today, but oh well, what can you do, you know? Made it work going into the afternoon session either way, so not too bad. Can you take a... Sorry, I'm getting a message from the chat room here. The live chat room, part of the Slingshot Futures members. They've got access to the chat room. They're watching too. Can you take a look at the euro? Yeah. So let's take a look at the euro side of things. Now, again, on a faster time frame, the euro has had really good movement today. I mean, it's really hard to argue. Let me get this stupid active trader out of the way. We can see that, I mean, overall, it's been a really good day. It's been bearish, but one of the things we were watching is this low and then a secondary push, right? Look at the response there. But like we've been talking about the last couple days, whenever you have that quick snap to a new high, very frequently, if you mark up the low to that previous swing high before the breakdown, you can find a 618 type of, well, between a 61.8% and a full 100% is where you generally find a lot of resistance, depending on which one can kind of line up with it. And here we can see, I mean, this is the 618, this gray line right there. 61.8% at 23.055. Ooh, man, there was a nice chunk of resistance here that came in, and that's what we've been fading off of. You know, looking at a little bit, kind of going backward, because again, I like stacking these levels on top of other things. We have resistance, support, a little bit of a twin reversal support here before another test there. Not really a surprise to see that great little drop to the downside where we're sitting now. Now, do I think they're going to break to a new low? They might, but that low is probably going to be pretty lackluster today. Mainly just because of the amount of bullishness that we have on this low. Buyers obviously defending the low, shoving it higher. They're likely going to defend a retest. So if it does break down to a new low, I'm assuming probably not going to be much to it before it bounces back. Now, on a faster time frame, because this is a, on a slower time frame rather, because this is a very fast time frame. If we look at something like a daily chart as an example, Euro USD, we're still stuck in the same range that it's been in for a long time, right? You've got the range highs up here, you've got the range lows down here, and we're just kind of in the middle. It is starting to edge towards the lows, so we might be gearing up for a longer-term buying opportunity, you know, sooner than later. But for right now, it's just smack in the middle of it. And given that the overall trend is obviously bullish, right? It's been going nonstop up since 2016, looking to be a buyer, but a buyer on a dip. I don't want to buy way up here. Doesn't make any sense. So seeing that we do have a range here and the range low, I mean, honestly, you can kind of bracket this range low inside of there because we do have arguments for both levels. Looking inside of there, anywhere inside of this or lower is an area that buyers will begin building in, and especially if you can start cracking below that overall swing low. So this whole zone is an area of interest on the euro. Let's see. Hey, Mohi, how's it going? Glad you're enjoying it. I hope you and yours are doing well. Good to hear from you. Not much else going on. Not seeing any other requests or anything like that. So, I mean, for the most part, you know, I think the big thing that we're really just kind of waiting for is, especially on some of the bigger time frames at least, going back here, is looking for just continuation of the move that we saw today. You know, continuation to the downside on gold, continuation to the downside on the euro, you know, continuation to the downside on the bonds, continuation, I mean, everything, we're just kind of waiting for a continuation before we can really do anything. The only one that's kind of a little bit of a caveat to that is the S&P, waiting for continuation to the upside so that we can find a selling opportunity. So a little bit of a different one there, but you know, it depends on how they respond up here. We don't know yet until it gets there. But yeah, that's going to do it for today. Again, I got to cut it a little bit short today. I got to bring the car in, get it detailed all nice and shiny. But aside from that, you know, like we always say, it doesn't matter what market you're trading, what market you're looking at, or studying, or anything. Always make a plan, trade the plan, follow those rules, and you'll be just fine. Like always, make sure that you don't miss these because we do it Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Click on the subscribe button underneath the YouTube video here, and then also click on the little bell icon to the right of that. To the right, maybe to the left, so you'll be notified every time we go live, so you don't miss them. But 1 p.m. Monday through Thursday, we got them all wrapped up, and we'll go through it every day. So, really, just the big thing, you know, going into tomorrow, the best thing I can say is just be careful. Non-farm payrolls can be really nasty, and if you're not on your guard, I mean, they can rip your account in half. So you have to be very, very careful trading non-farm payroll days. Generally, I don't have as many trades on non-farm. I try to take it a little bit easy. Some days you might not have any. Other days, you know, you might have just a chock-full day of opportunity. You never know. But got to play it a little bit safer going into tomorrow, and I'm assuming that tomorrow probably going to be early in, early out. Not a lot of traders are going to want to hang out into the afternoon session, and then, of course, we go into the weekend. Awesome, Mohi. That'd be great. Of course, you always have, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to shoot me an email. My email, jadebrink@slingshotfutures.com. We can cover it from there. But yeah, that'll do it for today. So, like I said, click on subscribe, click the little bell icon, make sure to sign up for the newsletter email so you don't miss those, and rest up, get ready for tomorrow. You'll probably see some fireworks, and yeah, we'll go from there. So, enjoy, rest up, have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you all on Monday, all right? Have a good one.